The classroom buzzed with restless energy, but the professor's voice cut sharply through the noise. "Marcus, your work is average at best," he said, eyes flicking over the boy with a thinly veiled look of disappointment. "You're not exactly a standout student." Marcus sat still, cheeks flushed but eyes steady. He said nothing, swallowed the sting. The room shifted. Some students exchanged uneasy glances, others smirked. The professor's tone grew colder. "Maybe you should focus on what you can handle instead of aiming too high." A silence fell. Marcus clenched his fists beneath the desk, but kept his calm. His voice came quietly. "I'm trying." The professor sneered. "Trying isn't enough. Average won't get you anywhere." Weeks later, at the state science fair, the auditorium was packed. Marcus stood on stage, clutching his project with quiet confidence. The announcer's voice echoed, "The winner of this year's State Award for Innovation, Marcus James." The crowd erupted, applause rolling through the room. The professor sat pale-faced, lips pressed tight, unable to hide the shock. Marcus looked toward the back, locking eyes with his teacher. His smile was calm, not boastful, just a quiet assertion of truth. Later, the professor approached him, voice low. "You surprised me." Marcus nodded. "Average is just what you saw, not what I am." The room held its breath, the balance of power shifting with every word, spoken softly but firmly. Marcus had reclaimed his space without raising his voice. The victory was silent, but it spoke volumes. "If you want, I can continue with the next 300-word segment in the same style and length. Just say, go. 4.1 mini you said, Yara ph kam words par part kam sakam 800 words ka to do chat GPT said, understood. Here's a much longer, approximately 800-word cinematic script scene based on your outline and the subheading. The classroom was unusually still for a late afternoon. A faint buzz of restless students lingered in the air, but all eyes were on Marcus. He sat near the back, his notebook open but untouched, his gaze steady despite the weight pressing down on him. The professor stood at the front, a stern figure silhouetted against the whiteboard. "Marcus," the professor began, voice sharp and dismissive, "I've reviewed your last few assignments. Frankly, they're average, nothing exceptional." He let the words hang in the heavy silence. "You seem content to meet the bare minimum." Marcus felt the sting, but he kept his expression calm. He nodded slightly, refusing to respond to the slight, to the doubt barely disguised in the professor's tone. The other students shifted uneasily, some exchanging smirks, others avoiding eye contact. The professor's gaze sharpened. "If you're going to aim anywhere, make sure it's realistic. Being average is safer than risking failure." Marcus's fists clenched beneath the desk, but he said nothing. His voice, when it came, was soft but firm. "I'm trying to learn," the professor snorted dismissively. "Trying isn't enough. It never is." There was a pause, thick with unspoken judgment. Marcus stared straight ahead, feeling the crushing weight of low expectations, the invisible chains of doubt cast by someone who saw him as less. Days turned into weeks, and Marcus poured himself into his work, often staying late in the library, tracing experiments, revising drafts, fighting through fatigue and self-doubt. His notebooks, filled with ideas, sketches, formulas, evidence of his quiet determination. Finally, the day of the state science fair arrived. The auditorium buzzed with excitement, packed with students, parents, and judges. Marcus stood by his project, a complex but elegant system designed to purify contaminated water using accessible materials. His hands were steady as he explained, his work to visitors and judges alike. The announcer's voice boomed across the hall, "And the winner of this year's State Award for Innovation is Marcus James." Applause thundered. Marcus's heart pounded, but his smile was calm, almost serene. He looked toward the back of the room, catching the eye of his professor. The man sat rigid, face pale, lips pressed into a tight line, shock and disbelief mingling in his gaze. Later, the professor approached Marcus privately, his voice low, almost reluctant. "I didn't expect this. You surprised me." Marcus met his gaze evenly. "You saw what you wanted to see. Average. But I'm more than that." There was a long pause, charged and heavy with unspoken understanding. The professor's expression softened, but his words held a tentative edge. "Keep pushing. You have potential." Marcus nodded once, a quiet acknowledgement. His victory wasn't loud or boastful. It was the reclaiming of space, a quiet assertion that he would no longer be defined by others' limits. The classroom, once a place of dismissal, had become a place of transformation. Power had shifted, not with raised voices, but with steady resolve and undeniable achievement. Marcus's triumph was a silent but powerful challenge to the assumptions that had tried to confine him. He had spoken without shouting, and the world had finally heard. The days after the science fair felt surreal for Marcus. The applause still echoed faintly in his mind, but the real challenge was just beginning. Returning to school, he faced the same classrooms, the same hallways. Yet everything had subtly shifted. The whispers that once carried doubt now carried a mixture of respect and disbelief. One afternoon, Marcus sat in the library, textbooks and notes spread before him. His hands moved steadily, scribbling equations, sketching diagrams. The effort was relentless, fueled not just by ambition, but by a quiet determination to prove himself every single day. Across the room, a familiar voice broke the silence. "Marcus." He looked up to see his professor approaching, eyes less sharp than before, but still guarded. "I wanted to talk." Marcus nodded, closing his notebook. "Sure." The professor sat down beside him, hands folded. "I've been thinking about what you showed at the fair. It was impressive. You have a way with the material, a depth I hadn't seen before." Marcus met the gaze, steady but cautious. "Thank you." There was a pause, heavy with things unsaid. Finally, the professor spoke again, voice softer. "I realize now I judged you too quickly. It wasn't fair." Marcus's chest tightened. "I just wanted a chance." The professor nodded. "And you earned it. But earning respect is more complicated than winning awards. It takes patience, resilience, and sometimes forgiveness." Marcus absorbed the words, feeling a mixture of relief and lingering hurt. "I'm willing to try." The professor smiled faintly. "Good, because I think you have something important to offer." As they talked, the classroom's dynamic subtly changed. The old hierarchy shifted, cracks appearing in the assumptions that had once held Marcus back. Others in the room began to look at him differently, not just as a student, but as a person with potential and promise. Marcus realized that the battle was no longer about proving himself to others. It was about believing in himself, embracing the quiet strength that had carried him this far. And in that moment, he knew the journey was far from over, but the path ahead was brighter than ever. The classroom felt different now. The air hung, heavier with expectation, but also a newfound respect that hadn't existed before. Marcus sat at his desk, books open, eyes sharp and focused. His hands moved swiftly over the pages, jotting notes and calculations, each stroke deliberate, a silent testament to the work behind his success. The professor's gaze lingered on him longer these days, less judgment, more curiosity. There was an unspoken shift in the power dynamic, subtle yet undeniable. The same man who once dismissed Marcus as average now approached with cautious acknowledgement. One afternoon, as the sun filtered softly through the blinds, the professor stopped by Marcus's desk. "Your project has opened my eyes," he said quietly. "I underestimated your drive, your talent." Marcus looked up, eyes steady. "It wasn't about proving you wrong. It's about proving myself right." The professor nodded, a flicker of genuine respect in his eyes. "You've made me reconsider what I thought I knew. Around them, other students watched silently, some with surprise, others with hesitant admiration. The classroom that once echoed with doubt now hummed with possibility. Later, during a group discussion, Marcus's ideas sparked genuine engagement. Voices that once ignored him now sought his input. The power he reclaimed was quiet, not loud or confrontational, but firm and unwavering. One of the classmates whispered, "I never thought he'd be this good." Marcus caught the words, smiled softly, but said nothing. The victory was in the shift, in the respect earned without raising his voice. He had rewritten his story, not through anger or defiance, but through quiet determination and undeniable excellence. The classroom was no longer a place of limitation, but a space transformed by resilience. Marcus sat tall. The boy once dismissed, now a young man reshaping his world, one steady step at a time. The classroom had changed, though the walls remained the same. The faint hum of whispered conversations and shuffled papers filled the space as Marcus sat at his desk, his focus unwavering. He traced formulas across the pages before him, each calculation a small act of defiance against the low expectations once imposed upon him. His eyes, sharp and steady, reflected not just intelligence, but the hard-earned confidence of someone who had fought for every inch of respect. The professor, once dismissive and cold, now regarded Marcus with a cautious curiosity that bordered on respect. It was subtle, no grand gestures or overt praise, but it was there, in the slight nods and the moments when he lingered near Marcus's desk, listening more than lecturing. The power dynamic that had once pinned Marcus beneath skepticism and prejudice was shifting inch by inch. One afternoon, sunlight streamed softly through the tall windows, casting long shadows on the wooden floor. The professor approached Marcus quietly, his usual stern expression softened by something almost like humility. "Your project at the fair, it challenged what I thought possible," he said, voice low and deliberate. "I underestimated your potential." Marcus met his gaze steady and measured. "I wasn't trying to prove you wrong," he replied, "just proving myself right." There was a pause, heavy with unspoken truths and the weight of past judgments. The professor nodded, slowly. "Sometimes we cling too tightly to our assumptions. You forced me to rethink." Around them, the classroom atmosphere had shifted. Students who once ignored or mocked Marcus now leaned in, eager to engage with his ideas. Conversations sparked around his work, and for the first time, he was seen not as an outsider, but as a leader. One whispered comment caught his ear, a mix of surprise and newfound respect. "I never thought he'd be this good." Marcus smiled quietly, the kind of smile that carried the strength of countless silent battles. He said nothing, letting the moment speak for itself. His victory was not in loud declarations, but in the steady reclaiming of space. A space earned through persistence, dignity, and undeniable excellence. The classroom no longer felt like a cage. It had become a place transformed by resilience and quiet power. Marcus sat tall, the boy once dismissed, now a young man reshaping his world, one deliberate, confident step at a time. The days that followed unfolded like a slow, steady tide. Marcus woke each morning carrying the quiet burden of expectation, not just from others, but from himself. The applause at the science fair was behind him, but the real challenge lay ahead, proving that success was not a fleeting moment, but a foundation for what was to come. In the hallways, whispers followed him like shadows. Some voices carried admiration, others skepticism cloaked in polite smiles. Marcus learned to navigate both with the same calm resolve that had brought him this far. One afternoon, the professor approached him after class. The hallway was empty, the muted buzz of distant voices fading into a quiet hum. "Marcus," he said, his tone less formal, almost hesitant. "I want to apologize for underestimating you before. Your work and dedication have forced me to reconsider my assumptions." Marcus looked at him, eyes steady but cautious. "Thank you. It means more than you know." The professor hesitated, then continued, "If you ever need guidance or support, my door is open." That simple offer carried weight, an acknowledgement of growth, not just for Marcus, but for the man who had once doubted him. As Marcus walked away, a mix of relief and determination filled him. The classroom was changing, but so was he. The battle was no longer against others' low expectations, but against his own fears and limits. At his desk, surrounded by books and notes, Marcus thought about the journey, each quiet moment of resilience that had led here. He was no longer the boy dismissed as average. He was a young man claiming his place, not with loud defiance, but with steady strength. Outside, the sun dipped low, casting warm light through the windows. The future was uncertain, but Marcus faced it with a calm fire burning deep within. Marcus sat in the quiet corner of the library, the late afternoon light filtering through tall windows and casting long shadows over stacks of textbooks and scattered notes. The hum of whispered conversations and turning pages surrounded him, but his focus was absolute. Each equation, each diagram, each line of writing was a step forward, a small, deliberate act of claiming the future he refused to be denied. The classroom had shifted around him. The students who once whispered doubts now approached with tentative respect, seeking his insight on projects and assignments. Even teachers who had previously overlooked him were beginning to notice his quiet determination and undeniable talent. One day, as Marcus reviewed his notes, the professor who had once called him average approached. The man's face was lined with the slow, reluctant admission of error. "Marcus," the professor began, voice low, "I've been reflecting on your work. You've pushed boundaries I didn't expect. It's clear you're more than what I first saw." Marcus met the professor's gaze steadily. "I've always known what I'm capable of. I just needed the chance." There was a long pause, the weight of years and assumptions hanging in the air. The professor nodded slowly. "I want to help you realize that potential, if you'll allow it." Marcus smiled, a mixture of relief and resolve. "I'd like that." That moment marked a subtle but profound turning point. The classroom, once a place of judgment and limitation, was becoming a space of possibility and growth. As the semester unfolded, Marcus's projects grew bolder, his confidence deeper. His voice carried more weight, not because it was loud, but because it was grounded in quiet resilience and hard-earned respect. The boy once dismissed as average was now a leader among his peers, a testament to the power of perseverance and dignity. And with every steady step, Marcus was rewriting, not just his story, but the story of those who had ever been underestimated. The classroom buzzed with quiet energy as the semester wore on. Marcus sat confidently at his desk, the weight of whispered doubts replaced by curious glances and tentative questions. His projects, once dismissed as average, now commanded attention. His steady voice guided discussions, his insights shaping ideas. The professor, who had once cast him aside, now observed with a newfound respect. He caught Marcus's eye one afternoon after class, his expression softer. "Your dedication is impressive. You've pushed beyond what I expected." Marcus nodded, not boastful but resolute. "I've always believed I could do more. I just needed the chance." Word spread. Peers sought Marcus's advice. Teachers consulted him. The power dynamic in the classroom had shifted subtly but undeniably. One day, during a group project, a classmate whispered, "He's not average anymore. He's the best." Marcus caught the comment, smiled quietly, and turned back to the work. The victory wasn't loud or flashy. It was in the respect earned without raising his voice. In moments of silence, Marcus reclaimed his space. The boy, once underestimated, now stood tall, reshaping perceptions through perseverance and calm strength. The classroom was transformed, not just by grades or awards, but by the resilience of a young man refusing to be defined by others' limits. And, with every quiet step forward, Marcus carved a path not just for himself, but for those who would come after. The days stretched long, but Marcus met each one with quiet determination. The whispers that once mocked him faded into murmurs of respect. His work, once overlooked, now sparked conversations in hallways and classrooms alike. Teachers paused, students listened, and the walls that had confined him seemed to shift. One afternoon, Marcus stayed late, poring over notes and sketches under the soft glow of a desk lamp. The silence was comforting, a refuge from the noise of doubt that had once surrounded him. The door creaked open gently. The professor stepped in, carrying a folder thick with papers. "I reviewed your latest project," he said, voice low but sincere. "You've exceeded expectations. Your method is innovative." Marcus looked up, eyes steady but cautious. "Thank you." There was a pause, heavy with things unsaid. Then the professor added, "I'd like to recommend you for the regional competition." Marcus's chest tightened with a mix of excitement and fear. "I won't let you down," the professor smiled, a rare warmth breaking through years of formality. "I believe you won't." Outside, the evening sky deepened, stars flickering. Alive! Marcus felt the weight of countless struggles lightening. The path ahead was uncertain, but with every step, his quiet strength grew. He was no longer just the boy called Average. He was a young man shaping his own story, one deliberate, resilient choice at a time. Marcus stood before the packed auditorium, nerves tightening his chest, but determination steadying his breath. The regional competition was more than a chance. To showcase his work, it was a statement, a challenge to every voice that had whispered average in his ear. The room buzzed with anticipation as judges and spectators waited for his presentation. He began calmly, explaining his project on sustainable water purification with clarity and precision. His voice didn't waver, but beneath the surface, years of doubt and dismissal surged with quiet power. Every slide, every detail was a testament to resilience. As questions came, Marcus responded thoughtfully, his knowledge undeniable. The crowd's skepticism melted into intrigue. The judges exchanged impressed glances, their earlier doubts replaced by respect. When the winner was announced, the applause was thunderous. Marcus stood still, a modest smile touching his lips as his name echoed through the hall. He caught the eye of the professor who had once dismissed him, now seated with a proud smile, clapping with genuine admiration. Backstage, Marcus was surrounded by congratulatory hands and warm smiles. Yet his gaze lingered on the quiet moments, the journey from dismissal to recognition. Later, alone, he whispered to himself, "This is just the beginning." The battle against prejudice was far from over, but the young man once called Average had reclaimed his voice. Not with anger, but with steady, undeniable strength, and with every step, he was changing the world, one quiet victory at a time. The classroom was quieter now, but the weight of change hung in the air like a soft but persistent hum. Marcus sat at his desk, books and papers spread before him, his focus sharp and unyielding. The boy, once dismissed as average, had grown into something more, a symbol of resilience, quietly demanding respect. The professor approached, his usual stern demeanor softened by something like respect. "Marcus," he began, voice low, "your work at the regional competition was impressive. You've shown depth and innovation." Marcus looked up, steady and composed. "Thank you. I'm still learning." The professor nodded, eyes meeting his. "I underestimated you before. That won't happen again." Around them, students whispered, some with surprise, others with admiration. The classroom's power dynamics had shifted subtly but irreversibly. Later, during a group project, Marcus's insights guided the team to success. His voice was calm, his presence commanding without force. A classmate leaned in, whispering, "He's leading now." Quiet, but undeniable. Marcus smiled softly. The victory not in loud triumph, but in steady confidence. The boy, once overlooked, had rewritten his story with resilience and dignity. The classroom was transformed, a place where limits were challenged, voices heard, and respect earned through quiet strength. And with each day, Marcus continued to carve his path forward, steady and sure. Marcus sat at the back of the classroom, his notebook open but untouched for a moment. The quiet hum of other students studying surrounded him, yet inside his mind raced. He remembered the first day the professor called him average, the sting of those words still fresh. But today was different. Today, the classroom had shifted. Around him, the professor approached, his steps measured but purposeful. He stopped beside Marcus's desk, folding his arms. "I've been watching your progress," he said, voice quieter than before. "Your work shows promise, more than I gave you credit for." Marcus looked up, meeting the gaze with steady eyes. "I've been trying," the professor nodded slowly. "Trying is the beginning. Keep pushing." Across the room, a few students glanced over, their expressions a mix of surprise and newfound respect. The power balance, once so rigid, had softened. The boy, once dismissed, was now a quiet force. Later, during a group project, Marcus spoke with calm authority. "If we adjust this part, we can improve the results." His teammates nodded, listening intently. The boy, who had been overlooked, was now leading by example, not through loud commands, but through thoughtful guidance. As the bell rang, signaling the end of class, Marcus packed up his books. A classmate approached, a hesitant smile on her face. "Hey, Marcus, you really changed things." He smiled softly, nodding. "One step at a time." The classroom was no longer a place of limits, but of possibility, and Marcus was walking forward, steady, confident, and unshaken. Marcus sat quietly as the classroom buzzed with chatter after the final bell. The walls no longer felt like barriers, but echoes of a journey. The same students who once doubted now sought his insight. His voice, once barely heard, now carried calm authority. One afternoon, Marcus stayed late, working under the dim glow of a desk lamp. The silence was comforting, a refuge from the noise of past judgments. The door creaked open. The professor entered, carrying a folder. "I reviewed your latest project," he said softly. "You've exceeded expectations." Marcus looked up, eyes steady. "Thank you." There was a pause, heavy with unsaid words. "I'd like to recommend you for a scholarship." Marcus's heart tightened. "I won't let you down." The professor smiled faintly. "I believe you won't." Outside, the night sky was dotted with stars. Marcus felt the weight of struggle ease, replaced by quiet hope. The road ahead was long but brighter. He was no longer just the boy called average. He was a young man shaping his own future, one steady step at a time. The auditorium was packed, buzzing with energy and anticipation. Marcus stood backstage, heart pounding but resolve steady. This was more than a competition. It was a declaration. Every whispered doubt, every sidelong glance had led to this moment. The announcer's voice echoed through the speakers. "And the winner of this year's State Science Award is Marcus James." Applause erupted. Marcus stepped onto the stage, hands steady, eyes calm. He caught the professor's gaze in the crowd. Surprise and pride mingled on his face. Backstage, congratulations poured in. But Marcus's mind was quiet. He thought of every moment he'd been underestimated, every average label he'd defied. Later, alone, he whispered, "This is only the beginning." The fight was far from over, but Marcus had reclaimed his voice, not with anger or defiance, but with quiet strength, and with every step forward he was reshaping his world, one steady victory at a time. Marcus sat alone in his room late at night, the soft glow of his desk lamp casting shadows across his notes and sketches. The quiet was both a comfort and a reminder. The battle was far from over. The award was a milestone, not a finish line. His phone buzzed. A message from Marcus's mother. "So proud of you, son. Keep shining." He smiled softly, fingers tapping a reply. "Thank you, Mom. I'm just getting started." The next day at school, whispers followed him like a shadow. Some students offered nods of respect, others still held doubt. But Marcus carried himself differently. Steady, confident and calm. His voice now commanded attention not by volume, but by the strength of his presence. In class, the professor approached quietly. "You've made remarkable progress. I underestimated you, and I'm sorry." Marcus nodded, accepting the apology. Without fanfare. "I'm grateful for the chance to prove myself." The classroom felt changed, not just for Marcus, but for everyone. The walls that once confined had softened, opening space for new possibilities. As Marcus packed his bag, a classmate approached with a tentative smile. "You've inspired me to keep going," he smiled back, quietly proud. "We all have more strength than we realize." Outside, the sun dipped low, painting the sky with hope. Marcus stepped forward, ready to face whatever came next, armed with quiet resilience and unwavering dignity. The classroom buzzed softly as students packed their bags, conversations blending into a hum of endings and beginnings. Marcus sat quietly, reflecting on how far he had come. The journey from being labeled average to standing as a respected voice had been long and arduous, but every challenge had sharpened his resolve. The professor approached, his expression more open than Marcus had ever seen. "Marcus," he began, voice steady, "you've changed not just your own path, but the way others see what's possible." Marcus met his gaze with calm determination. "I just refused to accept what others decided for me." Around them, peers listened, some nodding in agreement. The classroom was no longer a place of limits, but a space where potential was recognized and nurtured. Later, during a group project, Marcus's quiet leadership guided the team through complex problems. His suggestions were thoughtful, his demeanor patient. The boy, once underestimated, had become a pillar of strength and intellect. As the bell rang, signaling the day's end, a classmate approached Marcus with a smile. "Thanks for showing us what's possible." Marcus smiled back, the victory in his steady voice. "We're all capable. Sometimes we just need to believe." Outside, the sun set over the school, casting long shadows and warm light, a perfect reflection of transformation and hope. Marcus walked forward, ready for whatever challenges awaited, carrying the quiet power of resilience and dignity. The classroom was nearly empty now, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the rows of desks. Marcus remained seated, quietly gathering his books and papers, the gentle rustle of pages the only sound in the still room. The day's lessons, the eyes that had watched him, the whispers that had followed him, everything had changed. Not overnight, but in moments like this, when the silence spoke louder than words, the professor approached slowly, his usual stern demeanor softened by something almost like respect. He stopped beside Marcus's desk, folding his arms as he regarded the young man who had once been dismissed so easily. "Marcus," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology. I judged you too quickly." Marcus looked up, meeting the professor's gaze steadily. "Thank you." The weight of those words hung between them, a bridge mended not by grand gestures, but by quiet acknowledgement. The professor nodded, a faint smile breaking through the years of formality. Your dedication, your resilience, it's changed. The way I see you, and I hope the way others see what's possible. Marcus's smile was small but genuine. I'm still learning, still proving it every day. Around them, the classroom felt different, not because the walls had shifted, but because the space between people had grown. Peers who once ignored or doubted Marcus now sought his opinion. Teachers who had overlooked him now called on him. The power that had been used to dismiss was giving way to a growing recognition of strength. Later, during a group project, Marcus took the lead with quiet confidence. His ideas were thoughtful, his guidance steady. The boy once labeled average had become a natural leader, not through loud declarations, but through consistent, calm strength. A classmate leaned in, whispering, "He's different now. Not just smarter, stronger." Marcus caught the words, a flicker of pride touching his features. He said nothing, letting his work and presence speak instead. As the sun dipped low, casting a golden glow over the schoolyard, Marcus packed his bag. A fellow student approached, offering a tentative smile. "You've shown me it's possible to break through." Marcus returned the smile, eyes steady. "We all have more strength than we think." The classroom, once a place of limits and judgment, had become a space of possibility and hope. And Marcus stood at its heart, not as an exception, but as a testament to what quiet resilience and dignity can achieve. With every measured step forward, he was rewriting not just his own story, but the stories of countless others waiting to be seen. The fight for respect, for recognition, was far from over. But Marcus had claimed his voice, not with anger or defiance, but with unwavering grace, and in that quiet strength he had already won.